So
now get out.
Right. But it takes me to the next question of a year and a half ago, my husband and I got our dream house. Again, about 3 months after we moved in, there was someone from the community that wants to take the backyard area that is about 100 feet wide, that's a drainage ditch, and it's very natural, and they want to turn it into a children's playground. And I got so helpless and angry and frustrated at them, and I joined the board over the last year to help investigate alternatives in the community. I spent all this energy acting, all this extra stuff to offer alternatives, and they shot me right down. And I'm so upset, and several of my neighbors that are directly affected, we feel as if we're going to lose our homes because of the nature of what's going to happen there.
Well, now, when you hear us talking about moving up the emotional scale, what that really is talking about is taking a scenario of what is and doing your best to make yourself feel as good as you can. Now, we really want you to hear this because your practical mind says, well, I need to anticipate everything that could go wrong, and then I need to find a way of blocking that. And if I don't do that and they just carry on with what they want, then they're going to sweep me into a place that I clearly don't want to go if I don't find some way of stopping it early or protecting myself from it.
Or if I get in alignment with saying, I accept what they're going to do, I feel like I'm caving into them too.
Well, now let's consider it from the other point of view. Do you hear us when we say that well-being wants you? Mm-hmm. Do you hear us when we say that all of the things that you've been asking for, universal forces are lining up to accommodate you? In other words, there's not some conspiracy to keep you from well-being, right, and you have to fight and scratch for any little well-being that you can eke out. In fact, the exact opposite of that is true.
It is easy.
So when you are working to deliberately move yourself up the emotional scale, and the way that translates in very practical terms is, I'm going to make the best of this. From where I am, I'm going to make the best of it. Now think about what that means vibrationally. If I'm here in despair or fear or worry, and I'm deliberately making the best of something, then I'm going to move into something that feels less bad. And if I continue to deliberately make the best of it, vibrationally, I'm going to move into an even better vibrational place. And if I continue to try to make the best of it, I'm going to move into an even better place. So with that in mind, let's chat just a little bit about this. So do you own the land and they're wanting to confiscate it, or is it not your land that they're wanting to build the playground on?
The community owns the land, and there's 260 people that live in the community that, quote, all have an equal say, but there's 9 of us that are directly affected by it.
So this is an area that's owned by the community, and they're wanting to do something that would be for the betterment of the overall community, but most of the community that's voting for it are not going to be personally affected by it.
Well, we don't feel it's for the betterment. We like the natural look of how it is because it's native plants. There's a jog trail, and it's very nice the way it is. They feel a children's playground is for the betterment of it, and we disagree.
Do you have children?
No, but some of the owners do that are against it.
So can you envision happy children playing?
Yeah, I don't want them in my backyard.
So how big is your backyard?
From me to the beginning of the stage is my backyard.
So your backyard is very small. And what separates your backyard from this uninhabited area?
An open pipe fence.
So as you sit in your backyard, you can look out into this area and you like what you see.
Exactly.
And you're concerned that you won't like what you now will see.
Right.
So would you describe the emotion that is bubbling within you as being one of empowerment or disempowerment?
Very disempowering.
So it's no wonder it's almost like having a pillow pressed to your face, isn't it?
Yeah, my chest.
So
and I can't breathe sometimes. I get so upset with it.
So have you noticed that when you feel like they're going to have their way with you, they're going to do something that you don't want them to do, and doesn't feel like there's anything that you can do about it, and that suffocating feeling, can you feel how when you get angry about it and when you get together with others who are willing to get angry with you, how it gives you a little bit of relief?
And we did. We got angry, we got a little revenge, we got a little research, and then I got indignant, and then I fell right back into the feeling helpless, because then they take action that stops what we were doing.
When we talk about moving from that feeling of powerlessness into anger, we're not talking about staying there forevermore. We're talking about using it as a stepping stone into something that even feels better. But the thing that we want to convince you of, and it's not easy to do it with you or almost anybody in this situation, but the thing that we want to convince you of is that if you can move from that feeling of despair or powerlessness into anger, and then on into frustration, and then on into hopefulness, and then on into belief, not only can you then have power of influence about what happens, because now the universe is accommodating you. Now you're in alignment with what you want, where while you're in that fear and that worry and that anger, you are not in vibrational alignment with what you want. Imagine that you have a corporation, and this corporation has thousands of people, and you are the owner of the corporation, but you don't know about the computers, and you don't know about the products necessarily. You do not have your hands on every aspect of it. You don't even really know what many of the different people are doing. Many of them you don't even know by name or by sight. But you have a manager that knows all of that. And so when you want something relative to your company, you just tell your manager, and you have such trust or belief in your manager's ability to do whatever it takes to tell whoever needs to be told in order to get done what you need to have done, that you just relax and look at your company in that way and tell your manager what you want and trust that your manager will take care of it. Wouldn't you love to have a manager like that?
Yeah.
And we say you do. You have a universal manager that is always on your side. So this whole situation has caused you to consider things that you've never really considered before. You've focused on that area in a way that you've never really focused on it before. You've got your juices flowing about that in a way that your juices have never been flowing. And as a result, you've launched rocket after rocket after rocket after rocket after rocket of clear desire, clear desire, clear desire that are all being held for you in vibrational escrow. But when you fuss and fume and push against and point out all of the reasons that they shouldn't be doing it, now you are your own worst enemy. You're working against your own committee for your own cause. In other words, you're helping the others get what they want rather than helping what you want.
And that's what it feels like.
Whereas you relax and try to look for some positive aspects. Now, we're not trying to talk you into becoming at one with the idea of the playground. But if you will soften your resistance about it, you see, the thing that most people don't get is that when you soften your resistance, you get what you want. And what you're afraid of, what you just said to us, is I'm afraid that if I let down my guard, that then they'll get what they want, right, and I want. So if I don't stand up and fight against them, then it's like caving into them. And we say, you've got to line up with your own desires. So in that effort, let's talk about it a little bit. So let's envision that you've made peace with the idea of the playground going in because you're a team player and you know it has to be somewhere, and you're not going to be one of those people that's always saying, not in my backyard. Yes, we need it, but not in my backyard, even though you'd want to, and you certainly understand that. But you're trying to soften out of that, and you're thinking to yourself that if it were done in the right way, that you might not mind it so much. If it were done in a way that would actually enhance the area, that you might not mind it so much. And since it's such a big area, you might begin thinking about how children really love to be able to move in an area that's free. So you might begin to say, wouldn't it be nice if these children had an area that was safe for them to play in, that's bigger than most playgrounds, where they had places that they could hide, maybe even places where they could build their own little forts, maybe places where the natural habitat were in place, maybe places where the natural wildlife were free to move about, and occasionally there's something that they can play on here and here and here. But rather than it being a concrete blacktop parking lot or some sort of thing that's graveled with all of that bright colored stuff, what about something that blended in with the environment and was a place that children really wanted to be? Couldn't we have a win-win situation? You're beginning to say to yourself, wouldn't it be nice if it was a place where children love to be, where children like to play, but that was big enough and spread out far enough that they were not all concentrated in one place, where they could actually actually enjoy their serenity and their solitude and play their different games. And then you might say, and is there anything that I like more really than memories of childhood and memories of being free? And don't I really want a place that kids can do that? Wouldn't it be nice if all of these kids that lived here would have a place where they could go and play? And is there anything really that I like better than the sound of happy children? Children enjoy, children who are tuned in, tapped in, turned on, children who are in love with life, who are free for the afternoon, who are out having a good time with each other. Wouldn't I really like that vibration and that energy sort of around me? And wouldn't it be nice if whoever's making these decisions would hear from my universal manager as I'm putting all of these ideas into the pot? And wouldn't it be lovely if they built something that was really a wonderful playground, maybe even a model playground that communities all over the country could find and use and adapt? And wouldn't I feel wonderful one day to be sitting out on my porch and now the community, because now they've put this playground in, they've also realized that they're wanting to give us some privacy, so they've planted some shrubs and some different things close to our fence, maybe even on both sides of our fence, that's enhanced our sense of privacy and also given us still the vista off into the distance where we can see a little bit. And won't I feel good as I'm sitting here 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years after the landscaping has matured and these children are grown and other children are taking their place, that I had a part in making something that is so beautiful for children to play in? Wouldn't that feel good? Now what happens is
you're moving up the scale.
When you line up with well-being, you stop being the resistor, but you're not stopping the resistance to something that you don't want. You're stopping the resistance to something that you do want. Mm-hmm. Your resistance is subsiding, and now the universe and your universal manager has this clear, free-wielding opportunity to deliver to you in ways that you couldn't even conjure. In other words, all of a sudden, somebody comes into the picture, some developer who has access to materials that nobody even knew about when this whole thing first began. And all of a sudden, what's being built back there is not only not an eyesore, is something that's extraordinary. It's something that when people come, you say, yeah, I was part of that. You say, oh yeah, the children in the neighborhood are free to play there. They don't play there that much, but the ones that do really have a good time. And they made such a nice big place. That's what makes this playground unusual. They spread it out over a long area, so it's really a place where, because what could be more important to children than having a place that they can run and hike and hide and do all of those fun things that kids want to do? And I was in on that dream. I got in on it. Oh, at first I resisted it, because I didn't understand the power of my mind, and I'd forgotten the power of my universal manager. But once I got involved in it and started to chill out, all kinds of things started to move in and take place. And as we were talking to our friend earlier about how fun it is to get deliberate about something, you see, once you move up the emotional scale, now we've helped you do it quite quickly here.
Yes.
Once you've moved up the emotional scale and you start tapping in, you begin putting in your 2 cents worth about what you would like. I would like the playground to be built out of something that's conducive to nature. I don't want those bright red, yellow, green sort of plastic things. I want something that's more earthy, something that's more environmentally friendly, something that the children would enjoy playing in more. Wouldn't it be fun if we could? Jerry and Esther took granddaughter Kate and their parents to Disney World in Florida. And Kate, who is 3, was sort of in shock and overwhelmed with all of the stimulation of it. And then they found a little playground that had little buildings about this high that she could run in and out of. And that's where Kate wanted to spend the afternoon, along with hundreds of other little children. In other words, they liked those little places where they could be and where they could make their own games and where they could get to know one another. There is so much potential for something that would please the children and please the parents of the children and please you, that you now have access to, you see. Now, you're really going to like this. When you get hold of an idea and you become more and more specific about it and you begin rolling with it and you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and as you think about it, it thrills you as you think about it and you really get going on it, what begins to happen is, as the universal forces, you get to ride that wave that we are talking about. So not only is it thrilling to you, but then, because you've used the energy that creates worlds, you've opened a vortex to all of the creative geniuses that are out there working on your behalf, and you've got a momentum going, and now, if this group is not up to speed with your vision, then they just sort of go away. In other words, you become the dominant vibratory force relative to this playground. And if they're not up to speed with it, then it just doesn't happen. In other words, you envision that playground so non-intrusive and so wonderful and so fabulous. You set the tone so predominantly that the universe says, this is the way it must be. And if they're not up to speed with it, then they say, oh, never mind. They lose their impetus. But when you fight against something that somebody thinks they want, you fan the flames of their fire. You give them the energy with which to fight back with you, with which to fight back with you, with which to